Hi, I'm Ha-Joon Chang, one of the co-directors of DLD or Development Leadership Dialogue at SOAS University of London. I'm in Kuala Lumpur running our 11th Future Leaders program in collaboration with Kazana Research Institute. And in this workshop, we are discussing the challenges and the opportunities for the ASEAN countries in the three main areas. One is climate change, the second one is geopolitical realignment, and the third is the reorganization of global value chains. And to discuss these topics, I have three amazing speakers, Liz Thurbon from University of New South Wales, Keun Lee from Seoul National University and Chungang University in Korea, and Yuen Yuen Ang from Johns Hopkins University. I'm going to direct each topic to one of you, but please feel free to intervene and complement what the sort of main speaker has said. So let's first talk about climate change. I mean, Liz, you have written extensively on the energy transition, green industrialization, and other issues related to the climate change. How do you think climate change is going to affect the future of this particular region, the ASEAN region?
That's an excellent question, and climate change will affect the future of the ASEAN region much as it will affect the future of all regions and all countries, in that it will really frame the challenges that the countries face, and it will also frame the opportunities. So in terms of the challenge, we know that climate change is the existential crisis. It will impact on ecosystems worldwide. It will wreak havoc with weather patterns. It will impact on water security, on food security, and it demands an urgent response from all countries. And that response itself is a challenge. So countries are going to have to rapidly phase out the fossil fuel industries that are really the source of the climate crisis, phasing out reliance on coal and gas and oil for both an energy source and as a source of export earnings. And at the same time, they'll have to build up the new green industries of the future, which is a really big industrialization challenge. And at the same time, they're going to have to do all that while navigating these really complex geostrategic challenges that are causing great disruptions in global trade and investment. So this is a huge challenge. But it's also a huge opportunity in that the energy shift itself has the potential to be a massive national security multiplier, creating opportunities to build new green industries, to boost economic security, to manufacture your own energy, and that's energy security, to reduce carbon emissions, and that's environmental security, to boost social security by creating new green jobs, and also to deepen trade and investment relations in green energies, and that's really a geostrategic security opportunity. So that's challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, you have written extensively on the energy transition and green industrialization in China and South Korea. What are the lessons that you draw from these experiences for the ASEAN countries?
These are really vital lessons from the Chinese and the Korean approaches, which are really quite different from what we've seen, especially in the West, and huge lessons, I think, for ASEAN countries and for all countries. China and Korea in particular understand that the energy transition really is this challenge of creative destruction. You've got to build the new industries of the future and at the same time phase out fossil fuels. And China's taken a really interesting approach to that. In the West, we've taken what I think is really an analogical approach, which is, to approach this with a particular sequencing that's, let's try and phase out fossil fuel first by putting a price on carbon. We have all this debate about putting a price on carbon as being the most important policy instrument. And that's problematic because it's really hard to replace fossil fuels without creating the new green industries, but it's also really politically challenging. China and Korea, and China in particular, has started with new industry creation and has seen it as very much a development opportunity, an energy security and an economic security opportunity. And that's both helped create those new industries and new opportunities, but it's helped neutralise the opposition to the energy transition, creating new constituencies for the green transition, really creating that buy-in. So I think that's probably the most important lesson I would suggest.
That's right. This coalition building was critical in making Korea and especially China the new giants of renewable energy industries. Yeah. Okay, the climate change is having relentless but slow impacts. But the world, especially the Southeast Asian the region, is facing this dramatic impacts from geopolitical realignment that is going on, especially the rise of China, the reaction of the US to that. Yuen, you have written in depth both on China and the US. Probably you are one of very few people who know these two countries in depth. Do you, sorry, I'm sorry. So how do you see this evolving conflict between the US and China? I mean, are we talking about the emergence of a new multipolar world, or is China, not immediately, but in the near future, going to be the new hegemon? Is this conflict going to ruin the world or reshape the world? What do you see there?
Well, first of all, thank you so much again, Ha-Joon, for having me. We cannot understand US-China competition today through the lens of the old Cold War. It would be a mistake to assume zero-sum competition. It's a mistake to assume if the West is declining, then China must be rising. Also a mistake to assume that at the end of this competition, there will only be one superpower standing, like in the old Cold War. The making of America as a sole superpower is so extraordinary in circumstances that it will not be repeated again in the 21st century. What we will instead see, and we already are witnessing that, is the making of a multipolar world, but with two giants in the center. So there's no doubt that America and China are going to be the two most powerful nations in the world for a long time to come, and they each have different set of strengths. But at the same time, these two nations are not going to be absolutely dominant, unlike in the past, because we are looking at an unusual situation where both America and China have deep problems of their own at home. One of the terms that I introduced to try to make sense of this situation is, I call it the clash of two gilded ages. Both America and China are not in their golden age. They are in their gilded age, where they are prosperous nations, but they're suffering from the excesses of capitalism, whether it's inequality or pollution or corruption. And so America is in its Gilded Age 2.0, whereas China is in its Gilded Age 1.0. So despite the competition and often seeing them as two polar opposites, in fact, they have very similar problems of capitalism. And that is why under President Biden, he used the slogan, "Build Back Better." And Chinese President Xi Jinping said, "Common prosperity." These are already hints that they are actually dealing with very similar problems of capitalism. So we're not looking at a situation where in this competition, one of them will wipe out the other, and we will have one winner. Power will be much more evenly distributed than we've ever seen in the past. And as I've stressed, the important implication for ASEAN is that as scary as it may seem to be caught between these two powers, ASEAN has never had more voice and agency than it does today.
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, the changing economic geography is quite shocking. Now, you know, the U.S. Used to be the biggest trading partner of most developing countries outside Africa. Now it's the biggest trading partner only with Central American countries and India and a few other countries. I mean, now China's the biggest trading partner of all South American countries. And it's very often the biggest trading partner of African countries. So the whole world is being affected by this the shifting power. But I mean, you already said the new kind of opportunities that this shift is creating for the ASEAN countries. I mean, can you give us one or two more concrete examples of how ASEAN countries might take advantage of the situation?
Well, as we've discussed in the conference just a while ago, in fact, ASEAN countries are, in a sense, benefiting from US-China competition. A lot of the manufacturing and investments are actually coming from China, right? And then ASEAN is selling back to the rest of the world. But this part of the world finds itself caught between these two giants, and it feels that it has no control, right, over their conflict. And my emphasis is that instead of seeing these times as a polycrisis, as everything being a problem, and that policymakers need to move beyond this reactive mode, right? So constantly just reacting to what the US is doing to ASEAN or what China is doing to ASEAN, that there'll be so many more opportunities if ASEAN could come together as a bloc and increase its leverage and bargaining power and coordination within that region. That would be very difficult to do. There's no doubt about that. But if even some improvement can be made, there's a lot of gain for this region. So instead of seeing that as just a polycrisis, we can actually see that as a polytunity, a term that I coined to sort of flip this narrative of fear. And I think it requires fundamentally in ASEAN a change in mindset. Now, ASEAN, because this is a post-colonial region, is very used to playing by the rules of the game made by great powers. So the very exercise of how about we participate in actually coming up with some of the rules or even hosting the discussion, setting agenda, that is not something that ASEAN is used to doing. But in a multipolar world, ASEAN will have to learn to do that. And I would go further to say that in a sense, the fact that President Trump has utterly disrupted the economic order might actually be a good thing. Because if not for that utter disruption, the region would lack the incentive to do the hard things. So right now, I think there is the imperative to do the hard thing.
Keun, you've studied the rise of China from the 90s. I mean, you've done really in-depth work on the Chinese technological development, industrialization. How do you see this the new situation?
Okay, so I think we can notice some difference between the Trump 1.0 era versus Trump 2.0 in terms of US-China relationship and impact. In the Trump 1.0 era, there was kind of a little bit more benefit toward Asian countries than the cost side, because Trump 1 means only targeting China in terms of tariff only against Chinese product. That prompted many China exit and nearshoring investment to Vietnam and other South Asian countries. In that sense, Asian countries somewhat benefiting from Trump 1 era in terms of U.S. The containment policy against China. But now in Trump 2.0 era, we are charging tariff all over the world, including all Asian countries. Even more high tariff in South Asian countries. That means suddenly we are calculating differently in terms of facing more cost than benefit from this new Trump 2 eras. Because in the past, Asian countries used our location to export to US, but that become very difficult nowadays facing tariff against Asian countries. So we are seeing the more cost in terms of possibility of hollowing out of our manufacturing basis, because we have to invest in US. That means more volume production to be done inside US, whereas less volume, less production inside Asian locations. In that sense, we are facing more uncertainty. Of course, there are opportunity side, but that's the reality we have to face result. That means maybe we have to diversify in the market and location, maybe other than US, more to Europe and other southern countries.
Yeah. Now, you've done pioneering work on how developing countries can use a combination of the global integration and nationalistic effort to upgrade and develop their economies. Now, given your the research in the research from that perspective, how do you see the ASEAN countries taking advantage of the current situation and kind of reposition themselves in the global value chains?
So in terms of GBC, the Trump 1.0 era means that the kind of decoupling of China-led GBC versus US-led GBC. That means you cannot export to US if it is made in China. Also, if you use US technology, you can export to China. So it's a really difficult situation, right? So in now Trump 2 era, we have to reconfigure our GBC strategy. That means we need more flexibility in terms of location of production and the targeting market. So, for example, so if you still focus on traditional manufacturing goods, whether it is IT or clothing, you are far more exposed to fragmentation of GBC, because you have to outsource things from many type of locations. That's subject to more risk in this new world, new period. That means one alternative for Asian countries, rather than just traditional IT or clothing, you might want to target more local resource-based industry, manufacturing, and so on. For example, we talk about this today, palm oil or coffee and so on. Those resources are less exposed to global value chain. You use more local available resources. That means you can build up a more local value chain. So in that sense, it's a little bit better option than the traditional Asian countries specialization in IT manufacturing or clothing and so on. Also, it is accruing more domestic value added, because you are more relying on domestic resources and you have more bargaining power toward the world. Yeah. And you have some bargaining power as long as resources more available in your country. If you have monopoly of supply as a supplier in some resources, they give more bargaining power. So it's already happening. Indonesia charging export taxes, ban on some minerals, and so on.
Yeah. Well, the scary world, but there are all these new possibilities and opportunities, and yeah, developing countries, ASEAN countries, they should, like you said, Yuan, really take a completely different approach and reshape their future. Well, thank you so much for your fundamental, very informative insights, and I hope we continue this conversation and work together to build new strategies for developing countries. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was tempted to ask you a question.
Me? No,
Me too.
Yeah.
no.
Cut it out if you don't like
No.
it. Yeah. No,
No,
I
I'm
think
just
it's a real
MC.
shame that we didn't ask you a question.
Come on.
You are an expert in all of these topics. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you very
No, you're
much.
welcome.
Yeah.
No.